Hey, Black Swamp Podcast listeners. This is Tim. Thanks for joining me. Real talk, summer is busy. I've been in and out of the office, taking some personal time with the fam. Our artists and educators are traveling for summer events and clinics and performances, or spending time with their friends and families. Although I have some future conversations scheduled with Scott Deal, Teddy Hall Jr., Danielle Moreau, and Andy Bliss, I had trouble pulling together a new episode for this week. But I was thinking over the weekend about some great conversations I've had regarding entrepreneurship, which has been somewhat of a reoccurring topic on the podcast. So I pulled together a couple highlights from past episodes with Donnie Johns and Joe Gramley, who both focus heavily on the idea of percussionists being entrepreneurs within their educational circles. So if this is your first time listening to the Black Swamp Podcast, welcome to this best of episode. Thanks for tuning in, and feel free to subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts. If you listen on Apple, please throw us some stars, and better yet, a review, as that helps boost exposure and push our little podcast out to more enthusiasts like yourself. So another best of, here we go. Let's pull some audio from an early conversation with Joe Gramley. I think this is episode number 6, I believe. Joe is actually one of our very first official artist endorsers. He's built a stellar solo performance career, as well as longtime collaborations with Yo-Yo Ma and the organist Clive Driscoll-Smith. Joe lists versatility, building trust, and the ability to have conversations with professionals outside the percussion field as solid foundations for being an entrepreneur and building a career in the percussion community. So let's listen in.
Part of what I really want to talk about is because your career has been really varied and obviously successful. If you could touch on how maybe some of that developed, or what you've learned along the way, or what is a strategy, if you have one, or just kind of building a career in the percussion or music industry.
Mm-hmm. Sure. Yeah, for me, it's always been about remaining open to new experiences. And again, it goes back to the collaboration. As I started in New York in the 90s, freelancing and forging a career as a chamber musician, Broadway musician, and orchestral player, the key for me was just that, being open, being versatile across many different percussive platforms. And as I developed my performing career, my teaching interest grew, and my teaching experiences began to inform my work as a performer. My performing work most definitely informs my work as a teacher. And so the sort of my pedagogical career and my performing career developed and grew at the same time, to the point where in 2007 they met in the middle. They met in the middle when I was very much involved in the running of Silk Road and commissioning and performing and touring with Silk Road. And this want for me, a need to give back and to focus more of my energies on teaching. So I made a conscious decision to combine those two worlds. And that was when the job at University of Michigan came open. That was 2007. I applied. I remember I had played a concert in Chicago with Chicago Symphony. Silk Road had done a week of concerts. And I remember that my interview at Michigan was the morning after the concert in Chicago.
Yeah.
So I got the first flight out. I think I even had to wear the same concert clothes that I wore before.
Well, hopefully there's an iron in the hotel room somewhere.
Yeah, for sure. I was lucky enough to get the job, and this allowed me, as I was talking about before, to combine my two true sort of areas of focus and the things that I loved the most, which were performing and teaching. And to do that and to get to that point, I think, Tim, the key was remaining open to any and all experiences and opportunities that presented themselves to me, be it playing on Broadway, to playing at the Metropolitan Opera, recording solo CDs, collaborating with Glenn Velez. Whatever came my way, I wanted to experience that. And while I was doing all of that, the 21st century sort of arts landscape also began to change. And a student and a young professional was now called upon to do more than ever. You were called upon to be able to play drum set, to be an exceptional orchestral percussionist, to be able to read down a Broadway show, to go into a school and become a teaching artist, to teach privately. These skills were needed as certain sectors of our field started to become both more competitive and have less jobs.
Yeah.
So I found myself teaching at a time when what I had done, I think it could really help people sort of find their path in music, and that's really what I'm dedicated to now that I'm, and especially now that I'm moving to Jacobs School of Music at Indiana University, is this portfolio that one must have. I think of it as a mosaic.
Yeah.
One's career these days in music. You know, some of the pieces are going to be brighter and shinier than other pieces. Some are going to be larger. But it's this combination that's essential for us all to have a life in music. And it's this mosaic that I focus on now. And I'll move some pieces in and some pieces out, depending on where my musical and pedagogical interests take me.
Right.
But it's this combination which really makes me thrive.
So how do you best address that with your students? I mean, obviously in pieces that you choose, or being fluent in playing marimba and playing drum set, in theater work. I mean, obviously there's ensembles on campus, or there's, activities on campus, whatever, but do you kind of address that specifically in how you teach, or the way you teach, or how you kind of structure your studio?
For sure. Yeah, that's a great question. I begin with just your core foundational, sort of the 4 to 5 major food groups.
Candies at the top.
Exactly, right. Ice cream.
Right.
Anyway, so you have your core foundational 4 major food groups: snare drum, 2-mallet keyboard, 4-mallet keyboard, timpani, and complementary accessory percussion instruments.
Right.
One must have a strong and solid foundation of core technique and sound on those instruments and with those techniques. And that for me is at the undergraduate level. From there, we build on that with two areas. A selection of hand percussion, again, developing core fundamentals of technique and sound.
Mm-hmm.
But also, for me, this is where my job comes in. I need to find a way in with each student. What makes them happy? What's going to make them thrive? What areas do they have? Where do they have deficiencies? And how can we address those deficiencies in a way that's going to keep them moving forward and is going to augment their skill set? So if there's a deficiency in time or groove, let's find a hand drum that can satisfy the requirements of sound and technique, but can also address the elements of sound, time, and groove that they might benefit from.
Right.
It's about a conversation. It's about, again, you got to build trust with each student. And each student's going to have a different area that they might gravitate towards. And one of my jobs is to help the student to understand that these core fundamentals are necessary for them when they want to take that next step to that area that is truly their passion, where they find a niche that might be in their wheelhouse. And what I love about percussion is that each of us has a different set of talents and skills. And no two percussionists, this is the thing I love really about what we do as percussionists, have the same job. And getting that student to that point where they can access and actuate those skill sets on their own.
Right.
And that's my job, right?
Sure. Do you ever integrate, I mean, from your experience as being associate artistic director or learning how to book gigs, work with programmers, work with possible, composers, commissioning stuff, more of the kind of nuts and bolts of being a working musician? Do you ever integrate some of that?
Oh, for sure. I talk about that all the time in lessons and in master classes. And I sort of call it MLC, music learning curve. It's about being able to have a conversation with anyone sort of up and down the food chain, from the production manager, who really needs to be one of our best friends as a percussionist.
Right. And the sound guy.
Totally. It's amazing also, and now I'm almost 50, as I've seen my friends and colleagues in other areas of our fields develop their careers. It's amazing how you run back into people after many years. I remember that, 1992, I played the Marlborough Music Festival in Vermont. It's very famous for string players and pianists. Peter Serkin and Rudolf Serkin. Rudolf Serkin was the founder. Now the artistic director is Mitsuko Uchida. They brought me up to play the Bartok Sonata for two pianos and percussion with Andras Schiff. And I remember I met the stage manager. Her name was Karin Kloster. Super nice, right? And I remember, it's very important to be nice to everybody. It's easy to be nice to Karin.
Right. It's nice to be nice.
Yeah, because she's so awesome. Well, let's jump ahead 20 years. Now she's the director of international touring for Columbia Artists Management, right? This was her summer job as a stagehand for Marlborough. Well, one tour, the Mariinsky Orchestra from St. Petersburg with Valery Gergiev came to New York to play Carnegie Hall. They needed an extra percussionist. I got lucky enough to be called by Karin after all these years.
Yeah.
So you never know.
Well, yeah, I mean, that's just, proof that, you can be a great player, an amazing musician, but if you're difficult to work with, or you don't return phone calls, or you don't learn the rep or take time to be a nice guy, like, you're not going to get called back. Or when an opportunity comes back up, like you're saying, years down the road, you might miss out on a great opportunity. So yeah, it's cool to hear that I'm sure a lot of educators do, but just from your experience, you can integrate kind of that into your pedagogy, into your instruction.
Yeah, Tim, I think you've probably seen this as well over the years. Our field has exponentially grown in leaps and bounds in terms of the amount of great teachers and great players out there since I was a student, since I was 15. And what I tell my students now is, there are so many great players out there. Everyone can play, right? But it's those intangibles: being prepared, being early, being nice, being a great hang,
right?
Being an empathetic citizen, being open to new experiences, being able to have a conversation with anyone, building that trust. It are those. Excuse my grammatical issue at the moment, but those attributes are the ones that are going to serve you well in a day and age when everyone can play.
This conversation with Donnie Johns is more recent, but interesting to hear how some of his comments overlap with Joe's thoughts. use Donnie's recent PAS article about percussionists being entrepreneurs as a specific springboard for our conversation. Donnie shares thoughts on multitasking, prioritization, self-care, and confidence as building blocks for becoming a successful entrepreneur and percussionist. Donnie is an active performer and educator in the DC area, having just completed his annual DMV Percussion Academy in July. So let's hear what he has to say. So multitasking. Again, you kind of write percussionists need to develop abilities across many instruments and genres. Wait, did I write that? I wrote that. I was summarizing for myself. I was summarizing. So
it's good, man. Hey, look, it sounded good. I don't take credit for it.
No. Yeah. So basically, percussionists need to build some abilities across, various instruments. Obviously, we're snare drum, timpani, mallet instruments are kind of the main core, but Latin instruments, drum set, orchestral, drumline, stuff like that, and then different genres. I mean, just like you stated, either Latin or orchestral, or if you were really into funk, and so different styles, and we need to kind of transition through those. And so what you wrote was an entrepreneurial struggles honing a craft, marketing, promoting, budgeting, forging partnerships, self-care. There's some other things in here, dealing with challenging personalities, rejection. Like there's just some cool stuff in there that you address that I don't think maybe people always consider, or like self-care. Like, okay, I don't have time for that. I gotta stick to the practice room, or challenging personalities. Maybe I'm the challenging personality. So how did and obviously there's this parallel between being a percussionist and being an entrepreneur. Can you talk a little bit more about that?
Sure. I look at it. I've always looked at percussion as, people have asked me in the past, why did I choose percussion? Why do I enjoy it so much? For me, it's never boring. I feel like if I played just one instrument, I would get bored eventually. Percussion is one of those things where I've said it before, it's both readily accessible. In other words, you can put a shaker in someone's hand, they can shake it, and hey, they're playing a percussion instrument.
Yeah, sure.
But at the same time, it's also kind of inexhaustible in terms of just the amount of knowledge that is inherent in it, right? So in other words, you can be playing for 30, 40 years and be a master in one particular field and still be a complete novice in another field.
Yeah.
So it's kind of this paradoxical thing where it's readily accessible, but it's also something that takes a whole lifetime to master. And so you're never bored if you're fully delving into learning more and more about it. And so for me, that's kind of fascinating to me. That I enjoy always learning new things. I enjoy kind of juggling multiple roles and responsibilities. And for me, that kind of excites me,
Sure. I mean, you kind of alluded to it's natural to be overwhelmed, by a lot of these things. Like, how do you address that? Like, if you're talking to your students, and because I assume, this is part of your what I would call a curriculum, or like some sort of part of your philosophy, teaching philosophy. Like, how do you kind of address some of these issues, and not get overwhelmed?
It's a good question. I think to some extent, you have to kind of sort of be wired towards this type of, it's not for everybody,
Sure. Yeah.
You have a certain kind of proclivity or just wiring towards this field. But then also at the same time, just being able to prioritize and understand that while the tasks are immense, you don't have to consume it all in one day, right? Or in one week, 1 year. And so being able to kind of, parse things out into digestible chunks, right? Like understanding kind of putting first things first. This is where organization comes into play, mapping things out, figuring out what's the most important priority now and focusing on that, what's going to be a priority down the road, and kind of just mapping things out. But again, it's the fact that there are so many different responsibilities in front of us. It forces you to plan and be organized lest you get, toppled over, right?
Yeah. Oh, yeah, for sure. Um, I I love that you said prioritize because that's a word that was kind of my word for 2020 because I had,
Mhm.
obviously, I, I was talking to Lineage Percussion
Yeah,
several months ago,
yeah,
students at Tim Adams, and part of our conversation was like there's multiple kind of pandemics. And at that time we were I felt like we were living through two pandemics. Now I feel like we're living through three or four, like
about
obviously um, social issues that are going on, the actual pandemic, COVID-19, and then election season, and even now you're in DC less than a week after
yeah,
the events at the Capitol and
yeah,
stuff. So it's like there's all this information you're trying to digest and process, and then I'm reading, I'm researching, I'm like trying to like look at read articles, watch videos, read books and things like, and then decide, okay, how am I gonna prioritize this? Because
right.
sometimes I feel like I have fear of missing out. Like,
Yeah,
okay, I gotta watch this, or I gotta read this, or I gotta learn. So musically, maybe students are like, I gotta learn this, or I gotta read about this, or I gotta work on this piece. And you
yeah.
mentioned first things first. Is like, are there other ways that you sort of organize or prioritize? What you're trying to digest or get through.
Well, it's I would say it's hard in general. And to be honest with you, I think that as percussionists, we kind of have that wiring that we want to just be kind of in everything. We want to be
Yeah,
everything.
sure.
And honestly, I think some of that can actually be good. I think most of my percussionist friends are like just a little bit zany, myself included, right? Kind of all over the place. And some of that actually lends itself towards what we do, right?
Mhm.
But it's also a matter of kind of harnessing those energies and prioritizing. And look, I'll be the first to say I'm not always the best at it,
Yeah.
but, but that's where I lean on friends and colleagues and those that help me kind of organize my thoughts. I know we'll get into it more later with my business. I have associates that, um, I'm kind of like the creative visionary, ideas popping like popcorn
Yeah, yeah.
24/7.
Yeah.
And then kind of like, all right, you know,
Right.
they help me do that. They help me kind of structure and organize and prioritize and all that
Right.
good. So it's a team effort.
Yeah. No, it's like it reminds me of working at Black Swamp, to be honest, because we're I mean, we're a small company. We all have our different roles, but
Mhm.
yet sometimes we come together, and our VP of operations, Jamel Taylor,
Mhm.
he's like, so I mean, he heads up production and kind of organizes all that and handles purchasing, basically operations.
Right.
And but yet he's super creative and has really great kind of marketing ideas. And so we bounce stuff off each other all the time, and sometimes I got to struggle to keep up. Like, okay, I got to write down, okay, what did we just talk about? Like, I go back to my office and write this stuff down, and then I kind of process it and organize it, and what's viable and what's not, or what do we pursue next,
Yeah.
and things like that. And and Nathan, same way. He helps with the podcast, but he's uh, uh, does our shipping, and then and branding, basically, so all of our
Mhm.
online kind of social media presence, and then he's
You
been working
guys
on
do a great
videos.
job with that too, by the way. You
Oh
really,
yeah, I appreciate it. It's been a work in progress for sure. But um yeah, I mean, I appreciate you saying that. So yeah, you kind of, we all have our different seats on the bus, I guess.
right,
But
exactly.
we sometimes we talk on the bus.
Right,
So
exactly,
um
exactly.
um one thing I thought of when I was kind of reading that section on multitasking was, I mean, there's a cliche phrase, jack of all trades and sort of master of
Right.
none. Like, do you I mean, how do you kind of feel about that? Do you feel like you have to be a master of all trades, or you kind of need to be like proficient at everything? um
But I think inevitably you're gonna have areas that you excel in better than others.
sure.
And this is where, you get to a point where if you want to do several things on a high level, you got to just bring other folks in.
Yeah.
I think, I have skills in a variety of areas and whatnot, but I also know that I'm not a master of everything. And so, you know, part of, I believe, being a leader is recognizing your strengths and weaknesses, and then also recognizing the strengths in others and how you can bring others in to help sort of complement those areas. And so I think eventually it gets to a point where you've got to, depending on what you want to do, you've got to bring in a team,
Yeah.
it's beyond just kind of what you can do. But I think on an individual level, it starts with, being a visionary, having ideas in your mind of what you want to do, and then producing a body of work that kind of warrants people's respect and warrants, people's warrants your credibility.
Sure.
So people want to then come and work alongside you and help build things out even larger.
Yeah. Again, I think it's, I guess, kind of our philosophy at Black Swamp. Like we we have like a really great team right now, and we all have our spots on the bus. It's basically like I
Right.
said before, like
Right.
so we all kind of have our focus, and then we do overlap and here and there, and we're all kind of, we have our different strengths and weaknesses, which I'm still I've been working for Black Swamp for over 20 years, and I'm still discovering my weaknesses.
Oh,
So
it's a long process.
um so kind of the next topic of the article, what I saw was confidence. And
Yeah.
this like when I read this next little quote, I even tell my kids this. My girl, my oldest girl, is playing violin, and I
Cool.
talked to her about playing percussion. And you write, in the concert percussion setting, every note performed is a solo.
Yeah.
We
Yeah.
must have the courage to take initiative and risk embarrassment of having our mistakes exposed. Like I'm like, if you're playing triangle or you're playing crash cymbals in an orchestra, there's no hiding. Like,
Right.
yeah,
Exactly.
and even though you're not the only one playing in the ensemble, you're the only one playing crash cymbals or bass drum or a mallet lick or whatever. So, uh,
Exactly. There's
I
no crash cymbal section,
no, there isn't. That's what
aside from a drum line, a marching band might have one, but that's a
yeah.
whole thing.
Right. And I tell my daughter, I'm like, I mean, yeah, you got to practice as playing violin. Obviously, like everyone has to be playing together, and everyone has to be in tune, and
Mhm.
everyone has to be connected like that. But I'm like, man, there'd be days, I don't do orchestral work much at all anymore. But when I did, I was playing a lot of triangle and just
Mhm.
standing up and playing like Mahler or something, and
Mhm.
sitting for 20 minutes and then standing up and trying to play a triangle note or whatever. Like,
Yeah.
um, and
It's harder than people think,
yeah,
and like you said, it does. I forgot, one of my teachers told me that, and I can't remember which one said it, but yeah, just remember everything you play is a solo,
yeah,
you know, and so just having the confidence of just putting yourself out there and taking that risk, and you prepare in your score study and your listening, your preparation, your technical preparation, and all that. But when it comes time to do it, you gotta just go for it and do it. And the preparation has to be done beforehand. But
yeah, sure.
when you're in the moment, you gotta just go for it. You can't overthink it. You gotta just do it.
Yeah, and basically what you're talking about in the article is character trait. It's a similar character trait for entrepreneurs.
Yeah,
Um, I
yeah.
mean, and so, I mean, I guess we already just talked about it, but there are some more you wanted to share about that, or kind of
Or
expand?
I mean, I think, look, in the beginning, when you're starting business or what have you, you're going to have a good deal of naysayers. I mean, look, like I told you before, I taught in the schools for 10 years doing band and orchestra, elementary, middle school, while I also played, as a freelance percussionist. Um, and then when I left, the comfortable kind of, cushy. I taught at a charter school in DC, so it
Okay,
was a solid paying position. And then I left that to pursue my own career, not only as a freelance percussionist, but also to start my own business. And there were a good deal of naysayers, even people that were very much, like friends of mine, family,
yeah,
etc. And so I said, just to say, you're not always going to have all the support that you may have once it's successful. When you're first getting off the ground, it's kind of it can be a lonely road sometimes.
sure,
You got to believe in yourself, because a lot of people, the nature of human beings, man, you're not going to get the masses until there's a successful product, right? And so when you
hmm
get something off the ground, it's going to be you, maybe a few faithfuls, but it's going to be mostly you. And so you really got to just believe in yourself and believe in your value and believe in what you bring to the table.
Yeah.
To be successful.
Yeah. Interesting. Do you have any marketing or like business background, or is this just sort of on the job training?
On the job training, man. I'm kind of a fly by the seat of my pants person, and
Yeah.
I'm the kind of person, man. I don't know what it is, man. I seem to work better, kind of just I don't say I don't plan. I do plan. I do plan and prepare and organize. But
Yeah.
sometimes when the pressure's on, I do better under pressure. Almost like when I was in school, I would try to, if I had a paper due in 2 weeks, I would try at times to map it out, a little bit today, a little bit this, and I just couldn't do it.
Yeah.
But if it was the night before, I would crank that thing out. I'm saying that's just kind of, I'm just different, man. I don't know.
Yeah. It's interesting. This has been a BSP production, recorded and produced out of Black Swamp Percussion Facilities in Zeeland, Michigan. Audio and production assistance by Nathan Coles. Intro and outro music by Adam Hopper. Hope you enjoyed this best of episode, and we'll be back with a new guest in a few weeks. Take care.